Good morning, friends. It's Saturday, and I'm back with Chapter 39, the final chapter of my book, Campaign at Fort Stix. Now it's time to grab a snack, dim the lights, and let me take you into the mists of time with a story I call New Beginnings. Twisting hard on the throttle, I sent the motorcycle screaming down the road faster and faster until tears streamed from my eyes. As I reached the end of the road, I backed down the throttle and gently braked to ease the little Kawasaki into a U-turn. I rode back to the house and stopped the bike in front of my garage before shutting it down and engaging the kickstand. "That was great," I said to Craig as I grabbed the fuel can and refilled his tank. "I appreciate you letting me take her for a ride." "It's cool, man," he said, putting the fuel cap back on. "I got to get to the house now, but I'll see you in a day or two." "Okay, see you soon," I said and put the fuel away. I watched Craig ride off out of our driveway until he disappeared around the corner up the street. I was working on the trike when he came over, sanding a fiberglass repair my dad and I did the night before. It was now ready for primer and then gel coat to finish the repair. The motor repairs had been simple and completed already. For the first couple weeks of summer, I'd been going with Dad to the shop most every day until the last bus got painted. Then I heard there was an argument about one of the guys not completing another job while Dad was painting the bus, and Dad had to finish it for him but was not getting paid enough. Not sure what it was all about, but it sounded like the shop had become a hostile environment, and he did not want me there for a while. It was not really a bad thing. I spent more time now hanging out at the stables with Stacy. Occasionally I rode along when she took clients on tours at the park, but mostly just hung around talking while she took care of the horses. I did make a little extra money helping her dad to shear and then slaughter sheep. Sheep wool is incredibly fuzzy and hot to work with, especially in the summer. But it was a job, and there were not many of those out in the country. On days when Stacy or Craig were not available to hang out with, I rode my bike to the gravel pit and fished. I spent a lot of time fishing, and we had plenty of fish to eat in the freezer. I also spent time working on the trike, looking forward to getting it done so I could ride it. Dad came home from work early that afternoon with new spark plugs for the Yamaha. He had bought some a few days before, but they were wrong when he went to install them. That was when he realized that someone had upgraded the 250 motor to a 750, which explained why the little dirt bike had so much power. This time, when he put the new plugs in, they were right, and he fired it up. The Yamaha sounded good, and he took it into the back to ride in the field behind the house. I watched as he rode circles for a while. He popped a few wheelies and then pulled it up to where I was standing. Having ridden the smaller Kawasaki, I was eager to ride the big bike. In my mind, it was another step in getting ready to ride the trike. Dad lined me up and let me ride the Yamaha. I hopped on and eased her across the field. On the first lap, I took it nice and easy, and then as I was heading back to him the second time, I goosed the throttle a little to feel the front start to rise up. I liked the feeling, and did it again, but this time, the throttle stuck, and I rode a wheelie quickly toward the house. I could not pull it down. As I engaged the rear brake to slow it, the back tire skidded a bit to the side, and I was headed right for the air conditioner sticking out of the window at the back of the house. Getting closer to the house, I feared hitting it and hit the brake again. This time, when the rear wheel skidded, the bike came further back and laid over on its left side. I stuck my leg out to keep it from falling, but the weight was too much and it buckled as it pushed me from the seat. My leg hurt, but luckily, it did not get crushed under the bike. It happened so fast that it was hard to even realize what happened. The bike laid down on its left side and the front wheel turned sharply when it hit the ground, driving the handlebar into my shoulder. It broke my collarbone and left a nasty bruise and scrape across my chest. Dad ran to me to see if I was all right as I was standing up. "Sorry I crashed the bike, Dad," I said. He reached down and twisted the throttle hard to stop the engine revving and then shut it off. "It's okay," he said. "It was not your fault the throttle stuck open. I'm just glad you weren't hurt." I took my shirt off to see why my chest hurt and was surprised to see the scrape there. When I touched my collarbone, it moved and was very sore. Dad looked at me and told me to put my shirt back on and get in the truck. I put it on as I followed him to the garage where he pushed the bike inside. We climbed in the truck and he took me to the local clinic to get checked out. After an x-ray and a bit of poking and prodding, the doctor said my collarbone was broken and put my arm in a sling. He said I should not use the arm until the soreness went away, as that would let me know it had healed. He said I should feel better in a couple weeks. Mom had a fit when we got home and asked Dad why he let me ride the big bike when I was not strong enough for it. I stepped in and said I did it on my own, and she calmed a little, but it was still tense. I did not take my shirt off to show her the bruise and scrape on my chest, fearing she would never let me ride a motorcycle again. As I was heading into my room, I heard her tell Dad to make sure I could not ride the trike until I got bigger. The next day, Mom loaded Mark and I into her car with the baby, and we went to Lake Station to visit my grandmother. Since Grandma was a nurse, Mom asked her to look at my shoulder and make sure Dad was telling her everything. It felt like she did not believe he had taken me to the clinic, even though I told her he had. Grandma had me take my shirt off, and then they both oohed a bit over the nasty bruise across my chest. The scrape now had long, thin streaks of scab that raced through the varying shades of black, blue, and dark yellow. I thought it looked cool, but Grandma immediately made up a paste with Epsom salts, and after poking and prodding to verify my collarbone was only cracked and not displaced, made me lay on the couch with the paste on the bruise. I dozed off watching television while lying there and was awakened when it was time to go. Grandma washed off the now dried Epsom salts and helped me put my shirt back on and then the sling. I was surprised she did not make me tuck my shirt in. After getting lectured about staying off motorcycles because they are dangerous, she gave me a hug and sent me off to the car. Dad was home when we got back. Mom had stopped and got us burgers and fries for lunch, so we went straight into the house to eat after getting out of the car. I noticed Dad's motorcycle was not in the garage and thought it might be out back if he was riding it again. Even though I still kind of hurt, I wanted to ride it again. Sitting at the table with our burgers, we kept quiet while Mom and Dad talked about things that needed to be done. I heard something about a big change, but had no idea what that meant. They might have been talking about diapers for all I know. After lunch, I went back to my room to read and rest my arms some more. I guess I dozed off while reading because I woke up and it was dark outside. I could smell that something had been cooked, but had no idea what. I wandered out into the house and found Mom sitting in her chair watching television and Dad nowhere in sight. I poked my head out to the garage, but he was not there. His motorcycle was still not there either. Putting two and two together, I figured he must be out having an evening ride. I asked Mom what was for dinner, and she said there was spaghetti on the stove, just get what I wanted. So I went in and piled some on a plate and had my dinner sitting by myself. I wondered if Mark and Mom had already eaten, but Mom did not seem like she felt like talking. There was a very odd feeling in the house, and I could not put my finger on it. Dad did not come home before I was done eating. I put my plate in the sink and drank a small glass of milk before going to Mark's room to see what he was doing. Mark was asleep on his bed with his face buried in a pillow, up on his knees with his butt in the air. I was tempted to smack his bottom, but I knew I would get in trouble when he screamed for Mom, so I didn't. I went back to my room and read until I fell asleep again. I was up early and got cereal for breakfast. The house seemed oddly quiet, and I knew something was not right. I went outside to the front porch and looked around. It was a typical summer day. The sun was shining, and puffy clouds were drifting across a mostly blue sky. I considered going to the stables to see what Stacy was doing, but did not want to walk. I could not ride my bike with my arm in a sling, though, so I gave up on that. Dad came out on the porch and lit a cigarette. He said to make sure I hung around because we were going to Aunt Florence's in a while. Mark came out and walked around the yard looking for something. He did not say anything, but just went back into the house. A few minutes later, Mom said to get in the truck because we were going. As I walked off the porch to go to the truck, a train went by. I stopped and watched it for a moment, trying to figure out why it seemed odd to me, and then turned and went to the truck. It was not until we were halfway to Hobart when I realized the train seemed odd because Sheba, the Doberman, had not chased the train like she always did. I wondered where she was. As we pulled up the driveway and parked in front of Aunt Florence's house, I looked over where the farm used to be and saw two boys about my age drop something and go running off into the woods. I thought I heard them laughing. When we got out of the car, I told Mom I wanted to go look at my garden and watch them go inside. Walking to where I saw the boys drop something, I looked down to see the blobs that used to be my marble jars. The dust and ash were wiped away from them, and you could see the individual marble blobs and how the colors blended when they melted. Those must have been a couple of the boys from the school that knew about my marble jars. Were they competitors who came to gloat over my loss? Looking at where the house once stood, now there was just a perimeter foundation wall. It was separated in the middle by a deeper hole that used to be the basement. The water heater still stood in the corner, and it was now joined by the bathtub and toilet laying in the ashes. Other than a few metal door plates and the occasional doorknob or hinge, nothing remained of the house except ash. Turning to the garage, I walked into the open door and looked at the chicken and duck pens. The straw was still on the floor, but the feeders and waterers were gone. The lights no longer hung there, and I knew Dad had taken them to the shop and installed them in the paint booth. It just felt empty now. Unlike the first time I saw it, when it seemed like a monster could jump out at me at any moment, there was no life here. I wandered out to Fort Stix. Looking up the ladder, I could see the hatch was wide open. I hollered and asked if anyone was up inside there, but there was only silence. I wondered if those boys had also been inside Fort Stix. Returning to Aunt Florence's house, I sat quietly until we left. It was not until we were already turning onto the highway when I realized I had not even looked at my garden. When we got home, Mom handed me a large cloth laundry bag and told me to pack all of my clothes and stuff into it because we were going to be moving again. I was stunned. We had just arrived at this house only a few weeks ago, and now we were moving again? I did as I was told and made sure I got everything of mine, including my comic book, marbles, and pocket knife, into that bag. When I was done, she told me to take it out to the garage and put it by the boxes there. In the garage, I put my bag by the boxes and turned around to find that the trike was gone. Looking out in the driveway, Dad's truck was gone also. I was still trying to figure it all out when Mom came out with Mark and the baby and told me to get in the car. I did, and she drove us into Portage to a motorcycle shop where she parked in front and moved over to the passenger seat. Sitting there, I saw Dad's truck was parked in front of one of the shop bays, and the trike was in the bay. He came out and took over driving, and we went back to the house. I started to ask what was happening, but Mom said not now, and it remained quiet. When we got home, Dad backed the car in and opened the garage door. I watched as he put the boxes and my bag in the trunk and then went into the house with Mom to get more bags. During this, Mark and I were just wandering around the front yard, wondering what was going on. Mom leaned out the front door and told us to come inside. We went in to find TV dinners on the table and were directed to our chairs. Everyone was quiet as we ate, and I just stared out the window. I did not know why it was happening, but as I saw the sun setting, I knew we were about to embark on a midnight move. I wondered where we were headed now. When we finished eating and put all the trash in the can, Mom took the silverware to the sink to wash it. Dad told us to check our rooms and make sure we had not missed anything because we would not be coming back. I asked about my bike, and he tied it to the tow hitch on the back of the car. At least I would have that. It was fully dark outside when we climbed into the car and settled in. Mom had Mark and I grab our pillows and blankets to keep in the back seat with us, and we snuggled into our respective corners as Dad pulled the car away from the house. I looked up the road to the stables as we went around the corner, and then up the next street to Craig's house. I was only here a few weeks, and had made more friends than the whole time I was in Hobart. Not only that, but I was very close to a great small lake that I like to fish in. Though I had not even begun to dig it, I had thought about putting in a garden in the large flat backyard. Now we were off again. I drifted to sleep to the hum of the engine, wondering where I would wake. I was sleeping hard when my mother woke me to go inside. I went where she told me and climbed into the bed without really waking. When I woke in the morning, we were all there in a motel room. I looked out the window and the big sign by the highway said 3 Oaks Motel. I had never heard of 3 Oaks. Was that a town or just the motel name? When Mom and Dad finally got up, we got dressed and went over to the motel cafe for breakfast. Dad bought a newspaper and was going through the classifieds as we ate, writing things down. When we got back into the motel room, he made several calls and then said he would be back in a bit. He was going job hunting. We sat in the motel watching television with Mom. She would not let us go out and investigate nor go to the pool. She seemed very down, and nothing seemed to cheer her up. Dad came back in the afternoon carrying a bag of burgers and fries for everyone. He said he had no luck in the job hunt, but had a good prospect for tomorrow. While we ate, he made a call and then started looking through the classifieds again. The next morning, we all piled back in the car after making sure to gather everything because we would not be back here. Dad headed us north up Red Arrow Highway, and as we left the small town, I saw on the sign we had been in 3 Oaks, Michigan. So we were up in Michigan now, instead of Indiana. We drove for a while until Dad pulled up in front of a building that looked like a cantina in Stevensville. It was a body shop, and he got out to talk to the owner. When he came back, he said he had the job and would start in the morning. Then he continued driving north until we came to a sign saying we were leaving Stevensville and entering St. Joseph. He turned into a motel parking lot and went inside. When he came out, instead of pulling up to one of the rooms, he pulled around the pool at the end of the rooms building and parked in front of a 2-story white house with a pink trim. He said the house was subdivided into apartments and we would have the downstairs. Carrying my stuff up the stairs, it felt right. It felt like I was supposed to be here despite my misgivings about the move. There was a door just off the living room to the left, which Dad said was mine and Mark's bedroom. The next door was Mom's, and they set up the baby's crib in that room with them. Then down the hall was the kitchen, and bathroom was to the right. It even had a covered back porch with hookups for a washer and dryer. It was already furnished with the basics like beds, couch and chairs and dining set, so we did not have to worry about any of that. In our bedroom, there was a twin bed and a hideaway bed. Mark liked the hideaway bed, so we set that up for him, and we had just enough room to be comfortable. I was beginning to think this move might not be so bad. The front porch was wide as the house and almost as deep as the living room. If closed in, it would easily make 2 more bedrooms. Sitting on the very wide railing, I looked across the street and saw there was a drive-in theater there. On the corner next to it was a gas station with garage, and on the opposite corner was a gas station convenience store. Right next door to the house was a grocery store. Not only was everything handy, but I saw lots of potential for finding myself a part-time job. The next morning when Dad went off to work, I got on my bike to explore. I headed north along the highway to see what was there, and found a dirt road going into the woods beside the motel complex where we lived. I followed the road until it came to a T after about 3/4 of a mile, and turned right on that road. It ended at a very large field, and there was a turnaround. As I rolled from the trees, a large expanse of blue caught my eye, and I turned to look. Lake Michigan was only a couple 100 feet from me. I rode quickly in that direction and found myself sitting at the top of some very tall sand dunes leading down to the beach and water. To my right, about a 1/4 mile away, the dune turned out to the lake, forming a corner, and there was a breakwater. I knew immediately I had found my newest favorite fishing spot. From my vantage point on top of the dunes, I looked at the breakwater wall as it left the beach going out and could see the depth increasing all the way out to the end. There was an old lighthouse or pump house standing in the formed corner, and the water around it was deep as well. I rode my bike across the field to the opposite hill and looked down from there. That hill was covered in trees all the way down to the breakwater. This would be excellent for fishing for trout, salmon, and perch. I rode back to the turnaround and followed the dirt road until it ended at a paved road. A sign there pointed to Glenlord Beach to the right. To the left, Glenlord Road went to the stoplight at the Four Corners next to my new home. It was lunchtime, so I headed home to get something to eat. I was excited. I now lived very close to Lake Michigan. It was not too long before my dad took me to the shop to work with him. His new boss seemed to like me and even paid me to help prep his cars for painting. One day when I finished masking a car, Dad told me to just hang out by the shop while he painted it, and then we would go home. He gave me some change for the soda machine outside, and off I went. There was a small patch of woods on a hill behind the shop. It rained earlier that day, and one of my favorite pastimes was finding little storm runoff streams on the hills and creating small dams to catch the water. Creating small ponds and diverting water to make new streams. As I was busily building a small dam, the sun poked through the trees, casting glimmering sparkles on my little pond, and it seemed as though 2 sunbeams were framing the end of my dam where I had engineered the overflow. Then a small gust of wind blew the trees, and the 2 sunbeams became one in the center and reflected upward behind me. Curious, I looked to where they reflected and saw some reddish rocks sticking out of the hillside. Climbing up, I uncovered the rocks more than what the rain had done and discovered one of the few treasures a kid can find. A petrified tree. I had seen petrified wood in museums and school, and my grandparents had even bought me small pieces. But here in the woods was my own petrified tree. After millions of years, it lay there undisturbed. I did not break pieces off of it. I left it lying there to slowly become more exposed with each passing storm, waiting to be discovered again. I hope you enjoyed this look into the campaign at Fort Stix. That's all for this book, but I'll be back again soon with another story, just for you. Do you want to hear more of Kevin's adventures? Then you will be happy to know that the campaign at Fort Stix is the prequel to TheStoryTeller, another of my books. There are several excerpts from TheStoryTeller already narrated, but I would be willing to narrate the entire book if there's enough interest. You can read how Kevin found he could make pain go away with a story as he defeats heartaches, sudden loss, and even death with a word. His stories open doors to adventure, make friends, and become a lifelong pursuit which carry him out of this world. You can find links to the narrated short story excerpts from the Storyteller in the description text below, as well as a link to all of my books on Amazon.com. Until next time, sleep well.